Thanks for being here. You've been practicing law for more than 2 decades now on both sides of the courtroom.
Yes.
You're back in the prosecutor's race. Why do you want this job?
I saw the direction that the Jackson County prosecutor was taking this county, and it was not a direction that left us safe or secure in our neighborhoods, our homes, or in our own person. I actually saw, as the head prosecutor for the city of Blue Springs, when the prosecutor did not prosecute, I was forced to prosecute felonies on a municipal court level. That lack of accountability in prosecution, it left us with a high rate of crime, a high rate of violent crime and property crimes. And so when I saw those things and I knew that nothing was going to be done, I felt that with my experience, my knowledge, and my expertise, it was time to step in to make Jackson County safe in every single zip code.
What's your biggest criticism of the current prosecutor's office?
The lack of prosecution. Like I just stated,
Sure.
When I was the head prosecutor in the city of Blue Springs, when I am getting just felonies come across my desk, that's a no-no. And so those felonies should be in state court. She should have been prosecuting them, and she did not prosecute them.
We're talking about Jean Peters Baker, who's the current prosecutor. She has pushed back on this notion that her office isn't prosecuting the cases, saying she's not getting nearly enough of the cases, only a fraction make it to the office. What do you say to her?
I totally disagree. The policies that she set in place and the way that police officers have gone to investigate cases and turn those investigations over to the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office. When they do their job, there's been pushback against them to say that from the prosecutor's office that we are not going to prosecute these cases. Time and time again, they've had that happen to them. The reason that I know is because like I explained, when I was the head prosecutor at the city of Blue Springs, I'm getting the felony cases come across my desk. And when I would ask my police officers who I trained, why do we have these cases here that are clearly felonies? They would time and time again tell me that Jean Peters Baker has refused to prosecute these cases. So the cases had to come somewhere, and the police officers are now writing these citations for felonies as if it's a traffic ticket. And it wasn't just in Blue Spring, it's in every policing jurisdiction in Jackson County. The municipal court prosecutors are having to prosecute felonies as if they're municipal court cases.
So how do you break up that logjam then?
So as the next Jackson County prosecutor, in my first 90 days, I'm going to actually meet with every municipal court prosecutor in Jackson County to let them know that you no longer have to do my job as a state prosecutor. I'm going to do my own job, and I need you to do your job. And so by having continued contact with the municipal court prosecutors and the police departments, because they also need to know that I'm going to actually prosecute these cases, then everyone is going to be in their own sandbox. And they're going to have the knowledge that Tracy's doing her job, and now we can actually do ours.
You've been out in the community, so is your opponent, listening to voters and their concerns. What's the top concern that you're hearing from those voters, and what's your top concern?
The top concern that I'm hearing from voters at this point is property crime. But I knew that several years ago, and I warned people. I said, you know what? This is happening on a smaller scale, and no one's really concerned. But if you leave it alone, it's going to start spreading in areas that you never thought it would spread into. And so when we talk about property crimes, I'm here to tell you, and I really probably don't even have to tell you, in Brookside, in Waldo, in Ward Parkway area, they're experiencing property crimes like they never have before. They are terrified. And when you had Chef Sean Brady be murdered outside of his establishment for someone trying to steal a car, I mean, that was a wake-up call even more to what's going on. And now you have business owners, because I'm talking to them, they're asking, where do we go from here? How do we get to the point where we can ensure that we're going to be safe from these individuals that are perpetrating these types of crimes? And so for me, those are the fears from the community, but that's also a fear of mine. Because people have a notion, and when I say people, I mean criminal defendants. Like you said before, I've both prosecuted and I'm a criminal defense attorney. When they themselves have the notion in Jackson County that nothing's going to be done about their criminal activity, that means that they're going to continue to perpetrate those actions. And when they do that, we are all less safe. But I am here to tell you, as your next Jackson County prosecutor, I have to actually prosecute cases. Prosecution doesn't always mean you're going to go to prison and there's going to be mass incarceration, but it absolutely means that I am making you accountable for your actions.
I was going to ask, incarceration as a tool, as a deterrent, Do you subscribe to that, or are there other options you're willing to consider?
There are other options to consider. Right now, we have diversion. So you have, and this is for state court, okay? I can't talk about what's happening in the city.
Sure.
So you have diversion courts right now that deal with veteran issues, DWIs. You're also dealing with DV courts, mental health courts, and drug courts. You're dealing with those. So that's an option if individuals fall in those categories. If they do not, then you also have probation that's an option. But if those two suggestions or recommendations do not fit the scenario and it's a heinous crime, then that individual needs to go sit down. And when I say sit down, I mean they need to go to prison. They absolutely need to, because for far too long, these individuals who have committed violent acts, they've gotten away with it. They have.
I was going to ask, does that mean trying older teens who are still technically juveniles as adults in some of these more violent cases?
Absolutely. And the way that works, I like to educate people a little bit. When we talk about these teens, 17 and under, you're finding that they fall in the category of family court. And when the attorney for the juvenile officer decides that this person's actions are heinous enough to be prosecuted as an adult, they generally get with the Jackson County prosecutor and they ask the question, will you prosecute this case if we certify this individual as an adult? And the prosecutor makes the decision, yes or no. And so lately you've had a lot of circumstances where the Jackson County prosecutor has said, I am not prosecuting this 14-year-old or this 15-year-old. We're not going to do it. So that literally ties the hands of the attorney for the juvenile officer. But under my direction and my leadership, when the attorney for the juvenile officer decides to certify that individual, I am going to follow through and actually charge them as an adult.
Those are for violent crimes, as you said.
That is for violent crimes. Yeah. Because more often than not, the attorney for the juvenile officer, they are not trying to certify individuals for the car thefts or property damage and things like that. They're not trying to certify them for those things. The certification comes in with the more heinous crimes. And I have worked with juveniles. I've actually defended them. I do that work also. And so time and time again, I'm actually seeing cases where you do have the stolen vehicles, the fist fights and things like that. They're not being certified for those crimes, but for the execution style shootings of another human being, the bullet to skin that they're doing with other people, those cases are being certified.
Let's talk about the other side of the coin and nonviolent offenses. Jean Peters Baker has pushed back on nonviolent drug offenses, saying, I'm not going to prosecute those. Your opponent wants to continue that policy in part by refusing to prosecute nonviolent, lower level possession cases, she said. What's your plan?
You absolutely have to prosecute those cases. And once again, when I say prosecution, I'm not saying you're being incarcerated. Sure. And the reason that you have to do that, I am the only candidate that has real life courtroom experience, okay? And so on the defense side, when I am defending people who have possession, they have possession of controlled substance cases, it's a Class D felony, range of punishment to 1 to 7 years. These people are dealing with meth, fentanyl, heroin, wet, PCP, and other strongly addictive drugs. And when you deal with people who have addictive personality and they can't get their hands on those drugs, now they're moving to, I'm going to start stealing. Now you have the increase in property crimes and violent crimes, as we saw in Brookside. And when you have that happening, even though it starts off low level, it creeps up. And it sneaks up on you. And so you have to deal with it early and often. And what that looks like, what I like to see is putting them in drug court so that they can go ahead and get help and services for their addictive personalities or the addictive drug. But if they can't do that and become productive citizens in our society, then we have to do something stronger with them. But you have to deal with the problem, because when you don't, and you have a one-size-fits-all blanket policy of how you deal with drugs, what you don't prosecute or deal with or make a person accountable for, it just increases.
You're running as a Republican. Current
Yes.
prosecutor, we've established as Democrat,
Yes.
has pushed back against existing state laws like Missouri's abortion ban. Would you, if elected prosecutor, consider pursuing abortion-related charges?
The law is the law. Missouri Revised Statute 188.017 specifically says they will not prosecute the woman for having an abortion. And so when I see that and I'm hearing the dog whistles out there just for political purposes, you know, I won't prosecute the woman, I won't prosecute the woman. If they actually read the statute, you cannot prosecute the woman. And so when I see that, I'm like, follow the law and read the law. And when you actually read the law, you'll come to the same conclusion.
Mm-hmm. We talked a little bit about property crime, and it's gotten a lot of news coverage in Kansas City proper,
yes.
But Jackson County is a big county.
Yes.
So what are the issues outside of the city that you want to address?
Same issues. They do not get the same coverage, and I want you guys to start covering Eastern Jackson County as well. But they don't get the same coverage that Kansas City does. The same issues that are happening in Kansas City, they're also happening in Eastern Jackson County as well. They're having stolen vehicles. People are breaking into their houses. They're having the burglaries, but it's not as publicized. I have said time and time again, if you do not contain that wildfire, it is going to spread. And that is what has happened also in Eastern Jackson County. You have it there. It's just not as publicized as it is in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm. Are there more rural crimes that you're noticing versus urban crimes as far as drugs, that sort of thing happening out in more rural areas? You've talked a lot about addictive drugs.
Yes, I mean, think about this. When you talk about fentanyl, it touches every household. It touches every economic status that you can imagine. It's not relegated to the inner city or a poor person. When you are looking at these drugs, it is touching every household, rich, poor, middle class, and you name it. And so when I'm seeing that happen across the board, I know that something absolutely needs to be done. And that's why just a while ago I talked about prosecuting those cases early on to get these individuals the help that they need early and often.
Bottom line, what separates you from the other candidate?
My experience. And so I have been practicing, like you said, for 2 decades. It's been over 24 years that I've been practicing. I've opened up my own law firm, myself and 3 other females. I've managed people, I've managed attorneys, I've trained police officers. The Missouri Supreme Court actually appointed me to a board called the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel, where I oversaw all the ethical complaints against attorneys. And then I was elevated to the special representative to the Office of Chief Disciplinary Counsel, where I actually prosecuted attorneys. And so that was really hard because these are my colleagues. Right. But I'm prosecuting them because ethics in the profession is so very important. I've done that. I've done a myriad of things. I've been the head prosecutor, whereas my opponent has not. You name it, I've probably done it all. And that makes me, in this office, you have to manage people, you have to manage responsibilities, you have to manage a budget, you have to train officers. All of these things I have done, and my opponent has not. My opponent is more so geared towards programming. Let's have a program for this or a program for that. At this point, we are programmed out. The violence that we're experiencing in our county, it is such that we are not at a place where we can actually program our way out of accountability at this point. So what separates us is my experience, and my knowledge of the law in the courtroom, the cases that I've tried. My opponent has not been in the courtroom since 2014. So I think those are things that are very important for our constituents to know when they're deciding who's going to be the next Jackson County prosecutor.
Tracy Chappell, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.